Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the last lesson in Unit 12, the political shifts in South Carolina. The standard we're going to end up covering is 8.7.3. Explain changing politics in South Carolina, including the role of Thurmond, the shift from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, the increasing political participation of African Americans and women, and the passage of the Educational Improvement Act, or the EIA. The essential question is, how have politics changed in South Carolina since World War II? Now, the next several slides are going to have a series of political election maps. These maps were obtained from 270towin.com if you'd like to go there and investigate a little bit of what they have to offer. Now, the early years of the United States, the Republic time, as it's called, we see a shift in South Carolina from the Federalist to the Democratic Republican to the Democrat Party. Now, when we're talking Democrat and Republican parties back then, way long ago, it's not the same thing as the Democratic and Republican Party as of today, so do not get them confused. Their political beliefs over time are going to shift and change, so we have to pay attention to why there are shifts and changes. During the pre-Civil War and Civil War eras, South Carolina, as we've learned in the past, is going to secede or break away from the Union because of the election of Republicans like Abraham Lincoln, who opposed the expansion of slavery or slavery at all. Now, we can see here in the two maps, the map in 1800 and then the map of 1860. You can see the South in general is one solid color. During the Reconstruction era, the transition to the Democratic Party, also known as the Redeemers back then, who are going to try and redeem the South to the way it was before the war, is going to create what historians like to call the Solid South. Now, when Reconstruction ends in 1876, most of it's still going to be the Solid South. It was the Solid South and the Democratic Party that believed that it was the radical Republicans who were trying to change them. And people don't like change, especially when it comes down to the almighty dollar. Now, the beginning of the end for the Solid South Democrats. There's always going to be a Solid South, give or take, but the political affiliation or the political party in which the Solid South belongs to is going to go through this massive change starting in the 1950s and up through the 1960s. And one of the first events was Truman, who became president after FDR died in office in 45. Truman takes over, and in 1948 he desegregation of the military, the anti-lynching measures, and the anti-poll tax laws are going to create hate for the Northern Democrats. Southern Democrats are going to then, in 1948, essentially create their own little political party of the Democrats, and they're called Dixiecrats. And Dixiecrats are nothing more than Southern Democrats who do not support the ideals of equality for African Americans. Their main leader, their most important guy, was Thurmond, a South Carolinian. In 1948, he's going to run for president, and he's going to get his tail handed to him. But he's going to make an attempt, and this is the first time that we can see the South make a change, a solid change from the Democratic Party to the Dixiecrats and then eventually to a Republican Party. So between 1948 and 1964, we see this change from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. Now, along with the state, Thurmond is going to switch his affiliations as well. He's going to change over from the Democrat to a Republican because of a lot of different things. Some of the events include the Elmore versus Rice Supreme Court case that said white primaries or white only elections are unconstitutional. Another major event that would shift South Carolina and Thurmond to the Republican Party was the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case that said segregation of public schools is unconstitutional. Then the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 are going to push Southerners further and further away from the Democrat Party and more in line with the Republican Party. In fact, South Carolina, like a lot of other Southern states, since 1964, has voted for a Republican president every year except for 1976, when the state of South Carolina voted for Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter was a Southerner from Georgia, peanut farmer, who could sympathize and work with both political parties. But his failed presidency would push the Southern Republicans back to voting pretty much straight for Republicans. So a couple more reasons why South Carolina became more and more Republican is because of the anti-Vietnam protest. These protests were seen as anti-American, and it was supported in some regards by the Democratic Party that was more and more, as time wanders on, against the Vietnam War. You also see a resurgence of the fundamentalist and evangelical churches, and they're going to align themselves with the conservative agendas of the Republican Party. Now, in all this, how do African Americans and women feel about this entire situation? Well, obviously, African Americans, for the most part, are going to consistently vote Democratic because of the civil rights movement that was supported by the Democratic Party. Their power is going to be limited in the state when it comes to the Democratic Party because of the South's stronghold on politics. Over time, women are going to gain more power, and they're going to gain more power as the civil rights movement gains power. And currently, in the state of South Carolina, we have a female governor, Nikki Haley. Now, through politics, the power of education comes out, and it's something we have to talk about. Well, education in South Carolina is going to have a lot of major problems throughout our entire history. One of our major problems is the lack of funding and consistency to funding. The state of South Carolina's education, public education, gets its money from sales tax. Now, if the economy is really bad, people are not buying stuff. And when people don't buy a lot of stuff, then the sales tax that is used to fund or make education better is not going to be as high as it needs to be. So this mostly hits the poor school districts in poorer parts of the state because they just don't have money in the bank to pay for new educational programs. Wealthy school districts do okay because they have money in the bank during the bad times. Poor school districts just don't have it. So what I want you to do is go back, maybe even go to that website that I presented to you at the beginning of this lecture, and study how the state of South Carolina transitioned after World War II to now from a Democratic-held state to a Republican-held state. And think about why there was that transition. And you'll be able to figure it out and be successful. Well, go do that now and have a great day. Bye.